All right, guys, we live today again. Thank you very much for tuning in. I know some people of you watch the videos later, so I appreciate that. If you're watching on Facebook, share with your friends and family. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and like. Today, we have as a guest Joe Goldstein. Joe Goldstein is the owner of Optimized Computer Solutions. He's an IT professional, and he's going to share with us his experience and his journey from where he stands to start his own business. And so here we have Joe. Nice to see you again.
Thank you, Gus. Nice to see you again.
So, Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? How do you get started with your business? What did you used to do before?
Sure. I've been in IT almost my entire professional career, minus a couple of years very early on where I was a bank teller, and those were two really good years because it taught me a lot about customer service. But other than that, it really has been focused on IT and the computer industry. I knew all the way back to, I don't know, about 12 years old when I touched my first computer back in 1980, a long time ago, that I really loved kind of, fiddling with the computer. Programming way back then meant, leaving the computer on because there's no way to actually save the data, and turned that into something that I really had a passion for. Went to school. Where I went to school, we had a vocational technical school that serviced the area and allowed high school students to come and participate in those programs. So I spent 2 years in VOTEC and computer classes where I really learned a lot of the basics, and had a phenomenal teacher who later on in life I learned had got the job 2 weeks prior to us starting school, and really didn't know what he was going to do or how he was going to do it. And he and I have actually forged a pretty nice relationship. So a shout out to Gary Jacobs. He was probably one of the first influential people in my IT career.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward 20 years in corporate IT, everything from mortgage and real estate to document storage, and then spent some really amazing years at Intuit. Had a great run there. I spent about 3 years there, and it was like being in any other company for probably 10 or 15. The amount that we learned. Intuit was a great story back then in the late 90s. I was one of the founding team members for the not QuickBooks Online, but TurboTax Online. We launched that back in the late 90s. When I started Intuit, there were, I think, 6 people. I think I was the 6th person on the IT team, and there were 40 computers. And that was the most computers I ever saw in one area up to that point in my career. I thought 40 computers was amazing. Everywhere else that I'd ever worked maybe had 1, 2, if you're really fortunate, maybe 3 servers, and they had 40. I thought it was awesome. When I left there 3 years later, the team had grown from, when I started at 6, my team alone was 25 admins, and there were 3 other teams about that same size. So we had well over 100, 125 people in the IT department, between operations and support and networking, and went from those 40 servers to 1,200 servers by the time that I'd left Intuit. Did the startup thing in the early 2000s like everybody else, and like most others that failed dramatically, unfortunately. Spent some time at a home store, which most of you would know as realtor.com, managed their environment for a short while, and then somehow slid into healthcare in 2005, and that's kind of where I've been ever since. Always been a consultant, it seemed like, in healthcare. And in 2008, 2009, like everybody else, or a lot of folks, really hit some hard times. Was out of work and looking for work for about 8 months. And my new wife, we hadn't even been married a year yet, looked at me, and it was April or May of 2009, and said, "I'm tired of watching you sit in that chair, sending out resumes 8 hours a day. get out and go do something. And that was the kick in the butt to the beginning of Optimized Computer Solutions.
Perfect. So what you said you start a business before. What was it? It was related with the computers too?
That is this business. I had other little businesses here and there. I was always kind of the entrepreneur, even at a young age. I was out there mowing lawns or selling toothpicks with cinnamon on them when I was a kid on the school bus. Anything I could do that I thought could make, some money. I tried it out, but to really get started for, in a real business, it would be this to be optimized.
Now, when you started Optimize, you started by yourself, right?
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how was it? Because you were, for how long you were looking for sending resumes and looking for a job?
I think I was the CIO for a large hospital in Texas. I'd been handpicked for that job, and I was traveling between California and Texas every week. And once we had done a major migration, we finished that migration. And at that point, the company said, we really want you to move to Dallas. And I had no desire to move to Dallas at that time. My life was in California with my new family. So they said, well, thank you very much. And that was it. I'd been with that company for 4 or 5 years and had done a lot of big projects for them. And I was no longer needed. It was kind of like the epitome of corporate America at that point.
So you were a CEO of a big company. You didn't want to move to a new location, and they said, "Okay, thank you very much for your service. Go in your own way."
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what happened. At that point, I had 20 years of experience, and it was really hard in 2008 to find work because it was just a really tight job market. Most of the stuff I was clearly, on paper overqualified for. And the other, the few positions that came up, the competition was absolutely fierce. So it was a tough time, and my job became looking for a job, and that's how I treated it. I would go downstairs every morning. It was like I was going to work, and I would start looking for work. And like I said, after a few months of that, my wife just got tired of watching me, and she goes, "You're too talented. Go do something." And so I placed the beginning was placing ads on Craigslist. I was living in California at the time, and it turned out to be, I went from being a CIO at a hospital that had 800 and something beds and 800 plus servers and a team of 30 or 40. And now I'm right back to my beginnings and, really just wiping viruses and
you have to reinvent yourself.
Yeah. Had to start over. I started over, and I'm glad that I did, because it really has given me something that I can dig into, and that I know it's whatever I'm working on, it's for me and my family.
That's one of the things I want to ask you. You used to be the CEO of a large corporation. Of course, it was a transition that you lose your job, you start your new business, kind of an obligation of following through to get to do something. Now that you're successful in your business and you compare, would you have rather stay as a CEO of that company or stay with your business?
I absolutely love what I do now. Sometimes you need that get out of here moment, or that moment where you feel like, the world has come crashing down around you, to really get an opportunity to pick yourself up, learn what you're made of, and get out there and go do something else. There's that saying, when a door shuts, a window opens, and that really is that held true for me.
Now, you started with the Craigslist, putting Craigslist ad and helping people with their computer problems and things like that. What else you did to bring customers in?
So it was really advertising on Craigslist and taking anything that came my way. I remember I remember an incident really vividly. I got a call from a gentleman who needed me to come over at a certain time and wanted to make sure I was going to be there on time. And when I got there, he wanted to be sure that I was going to be done in an hour. And he told me I didn't have any more than an hour. I had to get it done. And he obviously had been going to places that he shouldn't have been on his computer. And that was pretty clear once I got on it. And as I was working on it, he would keep coming up every 5 or 10 minutes, checking to see how things are going. Am I going to be done? And just as I was finishing up right towards the end of the hour, because it was a bit of a mess, his wife pulls into the driveway. I can see her. I'm upstairs and she's pulling in her car. He's like, okay, it's time for you to go. She's coming in the front door. He's shuffling me out the back door. And it became very clear to me he didn't want his wife to know what he was up to because he had really messed up that computer. So that was one of the more memorable things. I advertised on Craigslist. That was really it. Talked to people, was making my own business cards. I think I might even made some flyers and walked them around to the local businesses. None of that really worked very well. I got my first business client and convinced them that I knew a system that I never really worked on before, but told them that I could handle it. And that's how I actually got started working on Citrix. That client was pretty good for me. It was, real billable time, consistent billable time. And then the big break came about 5 months later. I got a call for a 1-year contract. The only got you with that contract, it was in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. So it was a year. It was an amazing hourly rate for me at that time. And I took the contract and moved for the year to New Jersey. I shipped my vehicle out there and I got an apartment and moved away from my family, which I knew was going to be a year commitment. I'd fly home every couple of weeks. They flew out for Christmas, which was awesome. They came out over the summer and spent the summer with me in my little 2-bedroom apartment that I had rented out there. But that really was the launching point for what Optimized is today, what OCS has become, because the people that I met during that time, I was working for a hospital system in New Jersey. The people that I met at that time called me later after I'd left that organization and they had left the organization, and called me to come into organizations that they had gone into to come and help them out. And from there, things just started to roll and grow, word of mouth for us.
Now, this is very interesting because I know a lot of companies that do IT. And when I talked to them, I said, yeah, we can do it. Bring me any business. I can help any business. But you're very particular because you focus on one particular industry. Why you came out with that decision of focusing on this industry only?
It picked me, if I'm being honest. I started in 2005 when I started in healthcare IT. There was a stigma, and that was if you haven't worked in a hospital before, there's no way you can help a hospital IT department because you don't understand their problems. And keep in mind, at that time, the computers were just barely starting to come out of the basement of the hospitals. Up until that point, a computer was a pet project of somebody that was piddling around with some specific application that they might be able to use in a hospital setting. And there was really no large acceptance of computers in the environment. Most everything was still on paper. And the EMRs were just slowly starting to come into play. So at 2005, I interviewed for a job, and this one happened to be in Wisconsin. I was living in California at the time, and it was to be a director of IT for a hospital. And one of the questions they asked me is, how can you possibly know what's going on in a hospital? You never worked in healthcare before. And it was really, I had thought about that question before I got there, and I had an answer ready, and it was basically, your problems are no different from any of my other jobs or clients that I've worked with. The IT problems are IT problems. The only thing that changes is the language. So I guess they liked the answer because I got hired on, and in that organization, I moved from director to CIO in my time there.
How many employees you have today, or people that were helping your business?
Today I have 2 subcontractors that help me on a regular basis. And then I have a couple of other folks that come in on an as needed basis. I have a really good networking gentleman that's here in Florida that I bring on as needed. and I have we also contract out to different folks if I need to send somebody on site. We're very different from your traditional IT provider. We have been providing IT services nationwide pretty much ever since OCS started. Most IT providers will provide a service in their local area and maybe go out 50 miles, maybe go out 100 miles, but really they don't really go much beyond that radius, where our model has always been wherever you are, we can support you. And we've been very, very successful in that model. And we often get asked, I'm in Atlanta and one of my clients happens to be in Macon, or I'm here in Macon. How can you possibly support me? And so we walk through the reasons why this is possible. And, fast forward to last year, now everybody understands, working from home is not a mystery, as mysterious as it was, even a year ago. We've already been doing it for 12 years. And
Right.
we're very, very good at supporting our clients remotely. And we continue to be a provider of services nationwide.
Now, what are most of the problems that people face in their computer? Is it hardware related or is more software related?
It's software and user. Those very rarely do you get a hardware issue. They happen. Things break. Things are electrical. They fail from time to time, but more often than not, it's human error. They didn't plug something in. They hit the wrong key. They weren't trained properly, so they don't know how they should be doing it. Or it's a software issue where maybe something got updated and the update broke stuff. Or it's a new function that nobody's quite sure how to make it work or how it should work. So it's more software and a lot of it is user.
Okay, perfect. Now, for example, what would you have done differently when you just get started to where you are right now?
Wow. I would have loved to have had a mentor, somebody that could tell me what I was doing. Cause I come from the school of hard knocks. I think I had to learn everything on my own. And I did that for a very long time. And it's economical to do it like that, at least in the short run. But I think long-term, there are a lot of things that I wished I would have set up differently early on when my company started to mature. When I was out there kicking in doors trying to get work on PCs, probably that wouldn't be the time to have somebody. But when we really started bringing, when our revenue started to grow into the six figures, having somebody that knew about business would have been really helpful. They could have helped set up things like how I should be billing out, how I should be charging. When you're starting out, you're taking whatever you can get and you're doing it for whatever you think you can get. And you're trying to not overcharge because you want to get hired, because that might be, the your next meal on the table. And not having that desperation, I think is something that most young entrepreneurs don't understand. I kind of liken it to Groupon. And that is, I do a lot of escape rooms. I don't know if you've heard of an escape room, but it's basically you get into a room with a team of other people and you solve puzzles and you try to get out in 60 minutes. They're a lot of fun. I've done over 120 of them with my family and across the country, and they're a blast. But you see in that industry, everybody's trying to get people to come to the room because it really is kind of a one and done shot. Once you've played the room, you're not going to go back and play it again. And it really is just churning in new clients. So Groupon really became popular with this industry. And what they found, because I talked to a lot of owners, having done so many rooms, I can talk to them about a lot of different things. And one of the things to talk about is ownership, because it's something that I would love to do one day. I'd love to open an escape room. But when they started going to Groupon, they started diminishing their value, not only of their brand and of their room, they still weren't even making any money. So if it's $30, which is the average cost of having somebody come in, and Groupon's doing it for $20, and then Groupon is taking half of that, you're now making $10 when you should be making $30. And they get stuck in this this gruesome cycle of the only way to find people is to basically give their room away for free. And, that's the desperation part. My advice at this point, in my career, and if I was to open a room, I would never do Groupon. I would say I've put together a room that I know is worth $30 a person to come through, and I'm going to, get folks to come through, get good reviews, so people can share what that value is. And I'm not going to undercut myself. I'm not going to undersell myself. And, we do that in IT as well. We, there's a large range of skill sets and the type of mentality in our industry. You have some folks that are hanging a shingle that have worked on a computer for 2 years and calling themselves an MSP and calling themselves an IT consulting company. And then you got folks like myself and several of my peers that have been doing this for 20, 30 years and have a lot of varied background. You're both MSPs, you're both IT companies, but your background and your experience are wildly different. And the guy who hung a shingle after, being out there for a couple of years, he's charging $30 an hour for a service, where in our line of work, that same hour is anywhere between 125, 150 or more, depending on what the work is.
Right. And
you're really paying for that experience, right? It may take the guy who charges $30, it may take him twice as long to do it, and he may not get it right. And so the people that are in my position are saying, well, this guy's charging $30. I can't charge my 125. I can't charge my 150. You still need to do that. You need to charge that amount. You need to feel comfortable. And if your client isn't willing to spend that, then they're not the right client for you, because there are plenty of people that appreciate your level of service, your level of expertise. And as of late, I've been seeing something going around, I think Gary Vaynerchuk and a couple others, where it basically says, my rate is $600, and the person says, well, you only spent 30 minutes. Well, no, it took me 40 years to only spend 30 minutes on that. You're paying for the 40 years. You're not paying for the 30 minutes. And that's something that I would tell other folks who are getting started. You're charging for your value. You're charging for your experience, not the actual amount of time you're spending with the client.
I agree with you. And I explain a lot of people this sometimes. You could buy, for example, I'm a coach, and I explain to people, you could buy a coach for $1. And if it gives you the results you get, it's a very good price. You can buy for $10,000, and if it doesn't get the results you get, it's very expensive. But at the same time, you could pay $2, and if it doesn't get the result, it's extremely expensive. You get $10,000 and give you all the results, it's cheap. So at the end, you need to go for the quality and the experience of the people. Just focus on the price. You focus on the price, it's not going to work. And that's why I tell a lot of people, and I think so you got it there, is that the riches are in the niches. You choose a niche, and you being successful in that niche, and people value that experience. But when you go to everybody, you gotta charge $10, $20. It's just not worth it. And it's better probably working in public than charging $20 to fix a computer.
Yeah, and then there's, you can drive around any town and see folks who have opened up a shop that says, we'll fix any computer for $80. I honestly don't know how they make a living doing that, because I know what it takes to truly do that correctly. And when you start breaking out the time, you just can't make a profit that way. And it truly amazes me. Either they're not doing it right, which is probably the case, or they're just content with not getting what they're worth for doing it the right way.
Let me ask a question, Joe. So you've been very persistent in your business and devoted in your business, and of course you're very successful. In one word, how would you describe that is the quality that you have that has allowed you to get where you are?
Driven.
Yeah.
I'm highly competitive. I always have been. I played competitive sports up until my body wouldn't let me play anymore. And so after I couldn't do competitive sports, I switched to poker. Something else that's a little competitive, but just driven. I don't give up, and I really want to do everything I can to be successful. And it's funny, you say success, you say I'm successful. Truthfully, I don't consider myself successful yet. And I think about this, and I actually thought about it this morning. knowing that I was going to be doing this, and why I, at what point will I think that I'm successful? And I'm not sure what that point is. It might be when I don't have to be here every day, when my company is running well without me being involved every day, then maybe I'll consider that the success. I mean, God has blessed us. We've done very well. And I am grateful for everything that we've accomplished. My wife and I, she's a big part of our business. But, it's sometimes it's hard for me to think I've hit that level of success. And maybe that's the driven part in me, that, maybe that's going to be that carrot donkey the entire time, trying to reach that point, because that's, success, I think, is a journey. I don't know that it's actually a destination, because if you stop, your success could stop too, because there's always somebody out there willing to eat your lunch for free.
Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And
thank you.
Yes. So I want to, so thank you so much. And I look forward to keep talking with you later and see if we can do more things. Now, I do want to do one thing. Can you please share to our audience how they can contact you?
Sure. You can go to our website. It's ocsolutions.co. You can contact us through there. You can also give us a call, 239-323-2111. That's our phone number here in Florida. And you can email me directly if you like. It's joe@ocsolutions.co.
Perfect. Joe, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. We have Joe. We are going to have more interviews coming along in the next few weeks and few days. This week, too, we're going to have more guests coming. If you need anything, so as always, I'm a business coach. We can always talk about your goals, talk about what you want to do in your life. And if you have a story to share with other people, come over. Tell me about it. You can message me on Facebook. You can message me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And so thank you very much and have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.